Please do me a favor. Can you please click that VA Bootcamp link at the description box? Why, you ask? Having a second or third job in this economy is no longer an option. It is a must. Whatever skills you have earned in your earliest days of moonlighting or freelancing for extra cash to pay the increased bills must be updated. If Facebook and YouTube keep updating their sites every 6 months or less, what more for other apps commonly used for small businesses? What you may have taught yourself half a year ago may no longer be relevant last week. VA Bootcamp is one site I highly recommend for your next online skills updates. I learned how to pitch my skills better based on market conditions and back them up with experience and skill proficiency earned from VA Bootcamp. From social media management, bookkeeping, and even knowing how to put up your agency, you can find those course packages here. Just click my affiliate link to know more. Early November 2018, according to accounts of former employees, Defy Media announced a meeting with all of the content creators involved in their respective brands. Said content creators were told of the biggest shock of their life. Defy Media is no more. Just for the sake of compliance, everyone was told that they have a 60-day timetable to look for jobs elsewhere. A possibility that most of these creators, primarily from brands like Clevver and Smosh, have never entertained in the first place. How big was the damage done with Defy Media's closure? Good day, my name is Jing, and I am the host of Untold Legends, a podcast that was ironically once live streamed on YouTube with my current co-host JoeDini. Hello, Joe.
Hi, what's going on, everyone?
Yes, and I asked Joe's permission if I may finally continue with Season 2 and now Season 3 of Untold Legends, since I saw the potential in discussing the not-so-discussed parts of the internet, hence Untold Legends. And this is also why I ended up at least having a hand in selection of the topics here. And here, we are presenting to you our analysis of Defy Media. So, Defy Media was one of the topics that got me interested, since I am not a big channel at all. I don't have an agent. I have some allies or associates that help me plug my channel. Also, I still have control of my own channel so far. I am in a scenario that is very far from what most of the characters in this situation occupy. In short, I am not part of a multi-channel network. This is why we start with learning what a multi-channel network is. According to Google support, of course we will start with them. Multi-channel networks, also known as MCN or simply networks, are quote, third-party service providers that affiliate with multiple YouTube channels to offer services that may include audience development, content programming, creator collaborations, digital rights management, monetization, and or sales, unquote. I am more familiar with the concept of multi-channel network because of Darkside Phil and his mishaps with Machinima. How about you, Joe?
I have no recollection of what this topic is. Besides Machinima and Darkside Phil, that's the only thing I know.
It's a little tougher to research that topic. I'm not sure if I would be including Machinima in future seasons, but it would be a challenge for sure. So back to Defy Media. Defy Media was already mentioned in passing with JoeDini's episode on MatPat, the one from Legends of the Internet. He has his own podcast, Legends of the Internet. I would be including links to his own podcast or YouTube channel so that you may get a glimpse of his episodes as well. So this episode will try to delve into the other stories that may not have gotten as much coverage but still worth talking about. And here, which is why I mentioned November 2018, one of the earliest videos that tried to explain what happened with Defy Media was by Jocelyn Davis of Clevver TV. a group of channels that had the word Clevver in it. Clevver Style, Clevver News, of course, Clevver TV. Although it turns out that it's one of the least active channels compared to the others. And she had to use her personal YouTube account to get the word out about what she is allowed to explain. And this is from a video entitled An Honest Update on Clevver slash Defy, aired November 12, 2018. So this is more than a week than the supposed announcement regarding the layoffs. More on that later. So here, Jaclyn was honest enough to admit, and I quote, "If you would have told me even last week that these are the circumstances, I would have laughed. But it is what it is. The last week was completely blown my mind. I really just wanted to make this video to be totally honest and completely transparent about the events of the last week." Unquote. By the way, this is from the perspective of her channel, her side, Clevver TV, and she explained how she started here, of course, at Clevver first, since she's been with Clevver since day one, a company that has its headquarters in Beverly Hills, and she even showed a short clip, the earliest clip uploaded on Clevver TV, live from its Beverly Hills headquarters, to prove how early she started with this company. And she continued, "We started in the tiny little garage, and I've witnessed some pretty stuff, some really difficult circumstances, making tough choices, seeing people let go, seeing people fired. I've seen a lot of things over the past 10 years. But this, I don't want to sugarcoat. It is definitely the most challenging thing I've been through professionally because of the people involved. My friends, the people that I work with at Clevver. It's very personal as well. So I just want to break down the situation of what I know, what we're gonna go from here, so that everyone involved, including you guys, who are so much part of this journey, I just want everyone to know where things stand." Unquote. So here, it really shows that people at Defy Media, they all work in one building. People like Jaclyn from Clevver would occasionally check out the guys from Smosh, and then everyone be happy. Everyone's getting along. It's like a premonition, here we go with that word again, or a foreshadowing of how everyone at Defy Media gets along, except uh, with their CEO or other executives. So here, also Jaclyn mentioned here about how they were originally acquired by a company called Alloy Digital. Alloy Digital, the same company that purchased Smosh. They were a multi-channel company. And then a few years later, according to Jaclyn, in 2014, Alloy Digital merged with Break Media to become Defy Media. So that is how she had to explain that she doesn't own Clevver as a brand. The parent company owns it, and the parent company is Defy Media. She mentioned her part on the company call here, and I quote, "Last Friday, I was out at lunch. I came back and received word that everyone was to hop on a company call immediately, which is very out of the norm. This call was letting us know that Defy Media was having some issues financially with the bank." Unquote. This turns out to be just one of those compliance things that the company had to do in compliance with what was called the WARN Act, WARN, and Jocelyn explained it. This act that's meant to protect people from mass layoffs at companies. So essentially, they had to send out this notice saying that everyone at the Beverly Hills production office would be laid off on January 2nd because they needed to give us 60 days. So at least there was a law that was put in place there. It doesn't look so rosy from there, even if they mentioned compliance. November 2, 2018 was the beginning of the 60-day period. It was a Friday. So by Monday, Jaclyn and everyone else went to work. It was business as usual, according to them. Jaclyn realized it's bad when she was told that she can go to a meeting only with employees of the company, because the word freelancer, most of the people that works for Clevver are also freelancers. So employees, freelancers, they immediately made a distinction. Only employees are the ones allowed in the meeting with Jaclyn, at least on her part. It was a tough thing for Jaclyn to accept. She obviously thought, okay, this is gonna be rough. But on the other hand, she had to look back at the time when Clevver used to be just two people, like most channels. So they start alone or they start as a couple or just the two friends. Like in this case, when she uploaded her first video, her other coworker was only Erin. She has her own videos about what happened to Clevver as well. But this one with Jocelyn was a lot more comprehensive because of the disclaimer that was mentioned to her about she can only bring only employees of the company. She ended up bringing only two people at work for that day. So, of course, the next day, Tuesday, she was a little, maybe she was distracted in a good way because it was midterm elections, woke up, uh, shot a ton of content according to her, left work, went to vote. And then by the time that she returned to the office, she was called into another impromptu immediate meeting. That was the term used. And then, according to Jocelyn, there were about 10 of us from Defy in the office. They let us know that Defy Media would be shutting down immediately, that everyone was laid off. Production would be halted indefinitely. It happened that fast, and we had no idea. Unquote. They, everyone else had no idea. It was like somebody dropped a bomb, and everyone is left to reel in the aftermath of the explosion. To continue with Jocelyn's account of the events, so I also received word that a very small group of people would remain on board to hopefully help the brand, Clevver and Smosh, find new homes. So I should let you guys know that myself, Erin, and Jill are still at Clevver, doing everything in our power to help us find a new home, and that really is our goal right now. So it started, unquote. So it started with two people, and then there are three. So at the end of the day, it turns out that around the time of this shutdown, Clevver only has three employees. And of course, everyone was shell shocked. Everyone was working until 10 or 11 p.m. I can only imagine how much content they were editing that day. They had to tell everyone, like including the freelance staff, on what's going on. So about the email, about the impromptu meeting, and it was hard. In between takes here of this video, Jocelyn was cracking up, understandably. Much of the credit goes to their audience because in Jocelyn's point of view, they won't last 10 years as a company if they didn't have a supportive community to back them up. Of course, at this time, it was not sure how the future holds for them. I admit, I admire Jocelyn's leadership skills here, taking accountability and reminding everyone that at the moment, since the 60 days were given to them, then yeah, use the 60 days. Then everyone may hire everyone that might lose their jobs at Defy Media with the shutdown that came up. Since they do not own the brand Clevver, it's the bank that now owns it. There's another video that explained that and more than that later. Defy Media owed to the bank. They have debts. And then the debts matured. So since they now own Defy Media, they ended up owning a lot of these brands as well that are still with Defy Media around the time of the closure. And at the end of the video, Jocelyn came forward with answering some questions that are safe for her to answer. There's no mention of a gag order, just an admission that she doesn't know everything yet. So here, first question that was thrown to her was, did you know that this was going to happen? And Justin's answer was, absolutely not even remotely, and I'm fully shocked. And the next question was possibly, I can't help but be touched with this question. It's so simple. The question was, how are you? Jocelyn answered, I'm optimistic, I'm excited about the future. I already was planning on launching this YouTube channel at the end of the year. I have a lot other exciting projects that I'm working on, but Clevver does remain a priority for me. I want my friends to get their jobs back and I want to continue to entertain you guys. Unquote. Not many people would actually come forward and ask how are you to a company that or a bunch of content creators that just lost their jobs for doing what they love. And then next question is what exactly happened at Defy Media for it to close down? This is where I really realized that Jocelyn does not know everything. She doesn't have to pretend that she knows everything. And so she answered, I'm not really sure, but it was out of my control. And this was the next question that was interesting because it kind of reminded me of The Escapist. The question was, Lily was already leaving before this. How did you feel? How did she tell you? Will you still try to collaborate? Lily, one of the other people that Jocelyn mentioned that was with Clevver when they started, she already uploaded her own video regarding this issue, and Jocelyn, for the most part, would prefer that the audience would watch Lily's video on leaving Clevver right before Defy Media shut down. For her part, she simply answered, "As far as how I feel about her, she's family to me. She's like my little sister. We definitely 100% plan to continue to collaborate. I love working with all these people, but at the end of the day, I just want them to be happy, and happiness is so relative and different for everyone." Unquote. Other questions that were posted here. I think this one last question that I see that I can share here is, will you still be doing videos? Jocelyn mentioned that, the quote, for the time being, we will not be posting any more videos on Clevver. As far as I know, that could change. I will be posting videos on their personal channels, unquote. Which is why I ended up finding these other people with Clevver that posted their own respective reaction. Remember when YLF BuzzFeed trended, and then now what trended at that time was how I lost my job at Defy Media. A lot of people that were working at Defy, either as employees or as freelancers, they were blunt enough to admit that they have a day job to pay the bills, and then they have this job at Clevver that would help them do their passion. Not sure if you can relate to that, Joe, if about having a day job in a passion project.
Well, I mean, I've always had full-time jobs, but never anything freelance. So I don't have any experience with that, but I do know people that do. And for them, each day is a worry because they don't know when their next job is coming.
Yeah, I agree. Especially some freelancers end up getting a string of fixed projects or fixed time projects, not the daily, you know, paycheck to paycheck kind of living. Speaking of paycheck to paycheck, it also reminded me of the other companies that may not have been mentioned as much in the Defy Media debacle, but still are important to discuss since, as Lasercorn, yes, his username on YouTube is Lasercorn, has mentioned, there are a lot of more companies that Defy Media has betrayed. Spoiler alert, the escapist is included there. And Lily's situation kind of, maybe it kind of reminded me of the situation with Jim Sterling, because Jim Sterling left around the time that this happened, or at least before. It's like he avoided a nuclear a nuclear bomb. First, of course, Lasercorn, in a video entitled Top 5 Defy Media Betrayals, aired last January 26, 2019. By the way, most of the videos about Defy Media were around November, and a lot of them found it safe to upload again after January 2. And then Lasercorn explained how he got into Defy Media. Since, according to Lasercorn, a long time ago, I didn't really have a channel, and they offered me to make one for me and let me use all their equipment, and then just cut me a revenue share. And I'm like, that sounds great. I don't really have the equipment to make it myself. Let's do that. Fast forward, they do a shady bunch of stuff. I negotiate to get my channel back, but they threw a clause in there that says basically, hey, you got to stay in our network for X amount of time. And I was just about to get out. And I was going to leave. But before my contract could end, they went under. And they kept a bunch of money, like 3 months worth. And I didn't lose pat levels of money, but it was a significant chunk of my income from 2018. It was definitely a large percentage, and I'm pretty pissed about it. Which is why Lasercorn made this video. Since if MatPat can openly talk about it and be specific with the number of with the cash that was lost, okay, other channels like Lasercorn can talk about it too, although he did not disclose how much amount Defy Media failed to pay him. He almost went scorched earth. Almost. Even on the other video, he almost went scorched earth, but he tried to at least try to stay within legal bounds because he doesn't feel like getting a lawsuit his way when there's still cash hanging over this transaction. So here he mentioned about the 5 companies that Defy Media has screwed over. His words. So number 5 is Game Trailers. Are you familiar with that channel?
Yes, Game Trailers was the website that also collabed with Screw Attack back in 2005-06. This is when I was aware of them. And James Rolfe, known as the Angry Video Game Nerd, was partnered with Game Trailers and Screw Attack at the same time. So yes, I do know them very well.
Wow, that's nice to know. Yeah, since I just noticed here that most of the properties involve gaming companies, or at least media that involve gaming journalism, which is why Clevver TV sometimes comes across as a sore thumb sticking out among these creators under the Defy Media umbrella. So here, according to Lasercorn, in 2014, Defy Media bought Game Trailers. I remember them moving in. I'm like, oh hey, Game Trailers, I've seen your stuff. And in 2016, of course, Defy gave them all the X. They said, hey, we're going to keep your name and your trademark in your library, but we're not going to pay you guys anymore. And you guys can't have that stuff. Go do something else. I know Lasercorn is trying to be sarcastic here, but that's basically what happened. Eventually, since they don't own Game Trailers anymore, they ended up putting their own company, Easy Allies. So Easy Allies is the YouTube name of what used to be known as Game Trailers. Turns out, I checked them out on YouTube, but they also have. I think they're more active on Twitch. Last time I checked, and it's their own company. There are around 9 journalists or 9 former Defy Media employees with under the leadership of Brandon Jones that put up Easy Allies. Maybe you're familiar with him.
No, I'm not.
Okay. It turns out to have one of those good endings. Or yeah, they got screwed over by Defy Media, but they managed to go back and put up their own company. Number 4, Gamefront. Familiar?
I've heard of them. They were around for like a short period of time, but I don't think they lasted very long.
Okay. According to Lasercorn, Gamefront is the one that was bought by Break Media. When Break Media merges with Alloy Digital, which became Defy Media later on, Lasercorn is familiar with this topic since he used to write for them. It's a journalism website. They also hosted mod files and a bunch of other files too. The best way for Lasercorn to summarize what happened with Gamefront was that, and I quote, they're kind of studying the Electronic Arts School of Business Acquisitions, like 2015, lay everyone off because it's the kind of modus operandi. So yeah, buy a company, lay off people, then shut it down. Brilliant. Okay, number 3 is The Escapist. Yay, Escapist, yeah. The same website where Jim effing Sterling used to work before leaving in 2014. At least according to Lasercorn, he explained this part that involved Jim Sterling. While Jim left on his own volition, Defy Media subjected the rest of the staff to multiple rounds of layoffs before finally shuttering their North Carolina office. Now, what was left of the Escapist was sold to Enthusiast Gaming. Unquote. So here, I checked out Enthusiast Gaming, the new owner of the Escapist. Turns out to be an esports company based in Toronto, and according to its LinkedIn page, it is the largest publicly traded video game and esports company in North America. Variety.com reported that Defy Media got rid of the Escapist to focus on Smosh and Clevver, two properties who still made money for that MCN. That was interesting. Okay, and then number 2, the Warp Zone. Lasercorn described them as they make gaming videos, sketches, and music videos, acapellas, very talented guys. Over 2 million subscribers on YouTube, 300,000 followers on Facebook, and Defy just left them hanging. Classic. This was around the time that Defy Media was selling other properties because they're trying to remain profitable using Smosh and Clevver. They had to sell Screen Junkies off. They couldn't be bothered to sell the Warp Zone, and around the time that this video was uploaded, this channel was in limbo. They haven't put up a video in over 2 months because if you remember the explanation we had a while ago about multi-channel networks, they are normally in charge of the channel. They were in charge of the channel, so people at the Warp Zone cannot upload stuff because it's still under the ownership of Defy Media, and Defy Media got closed down, and the Warp Zone eventually had to find a way to get their brand back. So, according to Lasercorn, if you had sold the Warp Zone, another company could have paid them, giving them a production budget and let them keep producing videos. But instead, you said either we're not being offered enough money, or B, we don't really care about those guys. Now their channels are owned by the bank. The bank obviously isn't giving them a budget to make videos, so they're kind of screwed. Good work, Defy. Of course, number 1 is Smosh. This is more of a summary based on the explanation given by Anthony Padilla, one of the former main people at Smosh with Ian Hecox. Smosh was sold based on an expectation that the market value as a brand will increase once the company goes public in the stock market. Under Defy, the company never went public. This might be the part of the Defy Media story that people were waiting with a bated breath back in late 2018 and early 2019 because of their need to clarify things. They ended up launching their own podcast, which is the Smosh Cast. Episode 1 featured, of course, Ian Hecox and fellow content creators Courtney Miller and Shane Top. And Shane Top was actually the one who was often sarcastic in this episode in a good way. Around this time, more like either before or after, I should have checked the date. What date was that? They even tried to parody the president of Defy Media at that time. It's supposed to be a parody, but Ian was clearly having a PTSD episode, but well, he's forcing to laugh, but he obviously was traumatized at the thought of coming face to face with the president of Defy Media, which clearly tells the audience how the relationship between these content creators and their quote unquote overlords is not healthy. Of course, because not everyone knew who actually is the president of Defy Media at that time, they just used a parody name to refer to that president. In this podcast, this is where they ended up feeling serious, because this is serious after all. This is referring to a brand that they almost lost simply because of a company merger that occurred. Broken promises, basically. I mentioned a while ago about how Ian and Anthony were promised that the stocks at the time of Alloy Digital would rise based on acquisitions like Smosh, and then the merge happened between Alloy and Break Media, and no initial public offering in the stock market occurred, so it somewhat devalued Smosh market value only by stock market standards, I suppose. And so here, finally, they found an opportunity to talk about it. The three were like trying to finish each other's sentences, and sometimes it feels like they were talking at the same time, but of course, one would eventually concede and let the other talk. So here, in their point of view, of course, the one person that they expect to spill the beans was Ian, and he shared here what was going on around the time of. They did not expect this to fall, but they've been hearing a lot. Ian would refer to these things he's been hearing around as rumblings. Quote, we were in the middle of a writers meeting, and like there were like rumblings around the office that things weren't too great. And there were people that were starting to trickle out of the company. Unquote. He must have been referring to the times when Lily left Clevver, and then earlier, a few years earlier, it was Jim Sterling's turn to leave the Escapist before Escapist eventually got dismantled little by little before finding their own angel investor. In this case, Shane contributed to the story, and I quote, for the past year before that, every couple of months, there'd be just massive layoffs. And like 30 people would lose their job and would be like, oh my God, this sucks. Our budget kept getting cut and cut until we we're shooting sketches with nothing, unquote. And then of course, this is where Ian ended up sharing what were they doing at the time that the emergency phone meeting happened. There were some people like Courtney that immediately understood it's an emergency meeting, and Ian had a bad feeling about it. So it's either they were a little bit in denial of what was going on, Defy Media, or they would just like to think that they're overthinking this thing with the company. According to Shane, our head writer immediately was just like, he literally like with us, it's over. And I was like, whoa, it's just a phone call. We don't know that. And but boy, did he call it. At least one of the head writers of Smosh called that thing being over, and everyone was just like waiting for the end to come. Also, they were told of the timetable. So November 2, 2018 to January 2, 2019 was the timetable given for them to leave the company to find jobs elsewhere. 2 months was the timetable that was given to them to work. January 2, I mentioned January 2, 2019 was the final day for them to find jobs elsewhere, because this podcast was aired February 23, 2019. So it took them that long to finally talk about things, because they wanted to make sure that nothing is hanging in the air, that everyone has found their jobs, or at least in the case of Smosh, they should have at least found their own angel investor. If the announcement happening on a Friday already affected Clevver that much, of course it affected the Smosh crew as well, since you're supposed to be enjoying the weekend, but you're not. You have to wait for around 48 hours until you wait for the next announcement, which is on a Monday. So, Ian related, Monday comes around and we're still sort of working, trucking along. I'm writing a script and then we get an email. I remember exactly what I was doing. I was in the writer's room with Matt, Rob, and a couple other people. I think it's like some Smosh Games people, and we get this email and it shows up on Matt's computer and he's like, guess this email. And it's an email saying that we've all been effectively immediately laid off. Unquote. So it was all at once. No mention how many people are there actually, because the layoffs did not happen all at once, at least before this data occurred, according to Shane Top. And then here, all at once, everyone was finally laid off, like all remaining brands across Defy Media. They were effectively laid off. And Courtney tried to summarize that scenario as, go get your paycheck in this office right now, goodbye. Like, that awkward conversation going on with the HR. Maybe I've imagined that, Joe.
Hmm. It's like you get out of here if you want to leave. Goodbye.
Yeah. There wasn't even any formality there. Like, and then here, Shane was also working on a different project. So in other words, it's like Ian, Courtney, and Shane were in different areas creating content, and then this bomb drops that everyone is out of a job officially. Like, of course, Shane tried to laugh it off, at least on his part. He was like, hey, everybody got laid off. It's over. I was like, oh my God. And I quickly got all of my stuff together. I drove all the way in the office. By the time I got there, all the sadness had dissipated and now the party started. Like, they tried to make the Smosh crew tried to make a good thing out of this. Like, yeah, at least we have that one day in the office where we get to say goodbye to each other before we move on to our respective jobs, if ever we find jobs outside Defy Media. Ian admitted though that the best way to describe the atmosphere around that time, well, some people were trying to laugh it off, trying to party. In his point of view, it was delirium, like delirium after the layoffs. So he continued. So nobody knew what to do. I was writing a script. So I was like, I don't think Smosh is really gonna be over. So I guess I might as well finish this script. So I'm gonna just sit there and finish this script. Unquote. Ian was trying to distract himself from what's going on. Like, yeah, I'm doing my job. I'm going to finish this because I don't think I'd be running out of a job. And now in this podcast, once he was asked what script are you actually writing at that time, then he doesn't remember. He doesn't remember what was he trying to finish then, because he got overwhelmed. Because it's not just him that lost a job; it's everyone in that building. Everyone tried to console one another. At least the Smosh crew. They had some craft beer and snacks. Courtney was more specific in saying, "Yeah, we had every Domino's ever." Like, that's weird. Yeah, I've had Domino's. They tasted okay. And then everyone was like trying to at least console one another with food, with beer. And then, according to Shane, despite all of this, and I quote, people were sad, but it was one of those things. It was kind of like, kind of felt like a high school graduation or a college graduation. Like, we had spent so much time together doing crazy stuff, and then it was over immediately. I was expecting to continue to work there for a long time, and suddenly, there was that optimism in my head, and all of us were saying, "Oh, it's not over. It's gonna come back." But at the time, really thinking back on it, it very likely could have been completely over at them. Unquote. I think they had a tough time coping with losing a job because it's a company that shut down, basically. And they did not even face them. Like the people who were heading Defy Media, they did not even bother facing them. By the time the announcement came up, people at the Smosh crew, I can't help but think that by the time Jaclyn arrived at the Smosh at the Smosh cubicles, they were having party, or at least trying to party away the sadness, because how else can they handle this but with laughter? So it was something that they never expected, because according to Shane, it was their best week ever. Like, it was supposed to be a celebration. Two of their channels, the main channel with Smosh, and then the other channel, the Smosh Pit, they had the most improved views. Like, Shane referred to it as the best views ever. And how specific was the growth that happened in those two videos? Courtney estimated it at 600% growth in subscriptions. And this happened. You had this really good increase in number of subscriptions. You have more eyeballs to get to your channel, and then the company just let them down. Like, all of these efforts went to waste. It was the aftermath that was interesting here, because as much as Ian would and Shane somewhat, as much as they would not like to confirm if it was true, they have heard stories about the aftermath of this party. Must have been the beer or the sadness or the frustration, and then it came into a horrible alchemy that, according to Shane and Ian, some people started breaking some things. They must have been drunk, but it's not an excuse. And yeah, some people started breaking things. On Shane's part, though, how he viewed it, or at least what he saw, some people stole things. Maybe. It's like they can't choose between maybe and perhaps. They ended up saying, mayhaps people stole things. Mayhaps there was damage done. Yeah, those are the words that Shane ended up concocting just to describe in the best way possible the delirium that Ian eventually mentioned a few minutes ago. So here, it's easy for Shane to believe Ian's story. It's easy for Ian to believe Shane's story because they've seen things. And Courtney, unfortunately, she did not see much. Like, what exactly did they break? There were some Defy mugs in the office that some people were smashing with baseball bats. And then someone told Courtney that someone so crazy used a plunger on one of the computers. I think that's weird that they would be using a plunger on a computer unless the computer's in the toilet and they wanted to flush it so bad that they had to use a plunger. But that's an actual quote from Courtney. Used a plunger on one of the computers. Disclaimer, I don't actually believe that they don't know who actually smashed the mugs and plunged the computer. Maybe they just didn't want to name names anymore. They didn't name the executives at Defy Media anyway, so it would only be fair if they will not name people who actually smashed those things inside. And then, of course, the craziest story came from Ian. And I quote, and mayhaps somebody, I don't know who I heard, peed in one of the guys that was essentially running the company. I heard that somebody peed in his office, unquote. So good save on Ian. Good thing that he clarified. He did not pee on the actual executive. He peed on the office. Like, oh my God, people are angry. People are angry. Like, they wanted to make sure that the officer would be left in a mess. I heard you laugh. I can't blame you. So yeah, those were the stories that came up: broken mugs, plunged computers, and pee in the office. Like, yeah, golden shower. I'm sorry. I can't help but laugh at that. Apparently, the guy who owned the office that got peed on never showed up. and that guy never showed back up. Ian was referring to the guy who peed in the office. So maybe the guy who owns the office didn't show up either. Shane tried to save the situation here. Like he did obviously did not want to turn this episode into an opportunity to smash Defy, pun intended. Like he ended up saying was, to be fair, the leaders of Defy, don't say names, but they fired everyone and then didn't talk face to face with anyone. Didn't show up. And I was like really bummed about that. I was like, okay, because I was trying to learn a lot about just being a leader and what it's like to do business, as I had never worked in an office place before. And I was just really bummed. Seems like really poor leadership skills, because part of being a leader, yeah, you're gonna fail sometimes, and even if it's a massive failure, you got to own it. And they really didn't know. Bummed me out, unquote. And then, of course, on Ian's part, the large issue for me at Defy was the leadership, and I told people before, I felt Defy was just kind of rotten at the top. And we had huge issues with the person that was directly above us. And I went over him to tell the higher ups. I was like, hey, look, this guy's a problem. He's terrible for the culture. You know, his people are leaving because of his leadership. And I got a response. I was like, nobody cares about Smosh more than us. We're gonna do something about this, and they did nothing. Unquote. I need to say my opinion on that. I think that's bullshit. Because if they really cared about the company, they wouldn't leave the brand in tatters. They can't help but compare this to an 80s movie, according to Courtney. And the first 80s movie that Shane thought of was The Breakfast Club, wherein, according to Shane, we were the Breakfast Club, and Defy was the principal that would come in every now and then bark, "Stop having fun. You got to do this, whatever." Like, okay. It was tough because they didn't have a sense of humor. They didn't understand. I have to agree with that, with what Shane said there. Ian tried to make it a point that Defy deserves credit where credit is due, but it's really unprofessional for them to simply announce that everyone is laid off over the phone, over the email, not even facing the people that they're trying to lay off. They ended up trying to unload everything that they're frustrated with Defy in this episode. They tried to be fair because who knows if any of those executives can still get back to them. But one really sad, frustrating scenario that ended up getting shared in this episode was, according to Courtney, and I quote, "seems to hold us back sometimes in terms of relationships with other YouTubers," unquote. Ian had to clarify that, saying, "I know there were definitely some YouTubers who would not work with us because we were at Defy," unquote. So it was a constrictive environment. They were pressured to at least make videos that made money for the company and not know what's going to happen and not see this closure happen at all. And then they had to explain why they can't upload anything, not even a brief explainer video at that time when it was closed, because according to Shane, the channels were locked at first. Nobody could get into them, not even you, right? Shane is referring to Ian. And Ian is the person at least they expect to explain everything that happened. They did not get the opportunity that Clevver did, wherein Jaclyn used her own channel to announce everything that went wrong. Ian, well, it took him months to finally admit that they got locked out of their channels, they got locked out of the building. I can't blame the owners of the building if they got locked out, because perhaps after seeing all of the broken mugs and the pee, they must have realized, why the hell does it smell so bad here? Then they locked the place up. it took a while for them to gain access back into their channels because sometimes in the content creators community, Ian knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows the password to their channel. Then they finally uploaded on their channel um, a few videos that explain what happened, because maybe you do remember that video where they were honestly admitting that they need a home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then they kept making videos for a while. You can obviously tell that pop culture influenced a lot of these content creators here on Smosh. That during Defy, it was like the Breakfast Club. After the closure, it was like the Avengers 2, according to Shane. He was like, guys, this is kind of like Avengers 2. I'm like, Avengers Tower crumbles, and we're not going scrap together, and we got going scrap together and do everything ourselves. Unquote. He has a point. And yeah, I saw Avengers 2 as well. Like, when you see everything crumble in front of you, and then you have each other, at least you have a good source of inspiration to keep going with what you love doing and what is supposed to be your rights. Well, they have the rights to Smosh, and they really fought for it. Everything that happened um, in those stories were around November, and then by December, they're getting scared about what the future holds for them. And then fast forward to around a week or so, like they finally had to find a way to get their own brand back. Meaning, if Ian realized that if the bank owns Defy Media now, and Defy Media owns Smosh, then by default, Smosh is owned by the bank. And if they want to buy it back, they have to raise funds. And the adventures that Ian got into in order to win back the company, a lot of the things that he did, he only shared on the episode. Courtney and Shane and the others at Smosh obviously didn't know. And it was an opportunity for Ian to at least explain himself, that he tried to look for investors, and he even admitted that the one venture capitalist group that he hated almost got Smosh. Almost, like they were like planning to do um they would like to do some spin-offs. Like he mentioned Smosh Vietnam, so maybe it's like a nation group of venture capitalists. Like, no, you can't do that to Smosh. Like, this is not like BuzzFeed, that you can go BuzzFeed UK, BuzzFeed India, BuzzFeed Australia, BuzzFeed Philippines. Yeah, there was BuzzFeed Philippines. I'm sorry, BuzzFeed Philippines is cringe. That's basically what the venture capitalist people told Ian. And the example they used was with K-pop, like Super Junior. They have Super Junior in China too. They have um, EXO, another K-pop group. They also have um, a counterpart or spin-off version in China or in Taiwan. Last time I checked, and that's when it became clear that some of these venture capitalists can see the profitability of the brand Smosh, that they think that it's a franchise that you can simply stamp on some other person and call it Smosh um, spin-off, not realizing that the heart of Smosh is in Ian and his crew. So as much as they were protesting these proposals that these venture capitalists are planning at the company, that they had to at least cave in just in case. Spoiler alert, some other investor company, or angel investor rather, saved them. And that is Mythical, aka Rhett and Link. And I'm not very familiar with Rhett and Link, but apparently they are legends in the gaming community. Red and Link did to Smosh what they did to the Warp Zone. Like, yeah, we're buying the company and then you're free to do what you want with it. At least in this case, there was a happy ending for Smosh. They found an investor just like Clevver found an investor, and Clever's investor turned out to be Hearst Magazine. Hearst Magazine, that company known for publishing Cosmopolitan Magazine, 17 Magazine, Harper's Bazaar, and other publishing companies that are geared towards uh, the glamorous females. Finally, they got the investors. The Warp Zone got the investors. They got their respective brands back. So, which is why in another episode of Smoshcast, they finally had an opportunity to interview Red and Link because they managed to come up with the amount needed to buy Smosh from the bank and finally give it back, at least give it back to people who really mattered, the people who actually cared for Smosh as a brand. I gotta admit, people that ended up owning these respective brands, Smosh and Clevver, ended up gearing towards better markets, better marketing strategies because they have the right target in place. Happy ending for all of us, maybe, but not for Defy Media yet, because, well, I don't see an apology from them at all. I don't see them taking accountability, but maybe some corporations are made that way, and you don't always get what you want. At least these people got their lives back. Before we end this episode, Joe, any commentary, any closing remarks that we have?
Just sounds like every other independent company that just shuts down. It's just like, oh, hey, all this stuff is going on and we're trying to save our ass and we're going to screw our employees over because why the hell not? And then you realize, oh crap, they're not going to make it. And then some investor comes in and it's like, oh, we'll try to bring it back to glory. And then it's like, no, you're just going to do like the basic stuff because unlike the original owners, they're not looking out for glory. They're just like, oh, let's just go for the smallest. Let's just try to go for as much profit as possible without causing a ruckus, because this company has a history of it. So it's the same American story that you hear all the time, and it doesn't and it does and it leaks over to the internet as well. So that's what the lesson is here.
Yeah. Let's say that these people got lucky because in the case of Clevver, they found a home that turns out to be matching with their target market, which is young urban professional females. And of course, Smosh and the Warp Zone, they were gaming channels that also dabbled in comedy. And Red and Link are known for being comedians on YouTube as well. So yeah, win-win for all. As a weird postscript, uh, one of the heads of Defy Media was eventually discovered as one of the board of directors of Grubhub. So it doesn't sound so well for Grubhub. I think people started tweeting Grubhub, making that guy responsible for everything that happened. No updates as to what came out of that because it's Lasercorn that initially reported that, and then nothing else came out of it. So maybe they really don't plan to take accountability for everything that went wrong.
Nope.
Nope. So thank you very much, Joe, for joining us here on this interesting episode that we have here at Untold Legends. At least we shared some parts that were not exactly talked that often, or at least not talked that often in your part of the internet, since you're more into gaming. I managed to share some part about Clevver because, well, I admire them as a company. I admire their content too, and I admire the leadership that they exhibited once everything went to shit. Something that Defy should at least learn, even just once in their life. And so, Before we end this episode, make sure to watch out for our next episode, episode 3 of season 3 of Untold Legends. We will be presenting Mermaid Jude. Mermaid Jude, yes, one of those Twitch streamers that ended up getting canceled question mark online for doing some stuff that we will be discussing on the next episode of Untold Legends Season 3. Make sure to click like, share, comment other suggestions for future episodes on the next season of Untold Legends, and make sure to click that bell to be notified immediately of the latest uploads from our channel. So, my name is Jing. If you need another podcast researcher, you can always hit me up here on this channel, or you can follow me on social media as well. My handle at Twitter is also at Jing Dalagan. You can also follow me on Facebook, the Writing Jing page. So thank you very much. Have a great day, night, whatever time you may be, wherever you are. Bye bye.
Bye.